What's up guys, Perry from Rockville here, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your ROCKBOOTH truss. So as you can see, it comes with the frame for the facade, which is kept closed by these Velcro strips on the top and on the bottom, so it doesn't fly open when we're transporting it around. It also comes with two tabletops, one larger and one smaller one, two scrims, one in white and one in black. Inside of the smaller bag, we have the poles for the truss system, the hardware to put the truss onto our facade, and hardware to mount our lights to the truss. And there's also a large bag to hold our facade, tables, and our scrims. So the first thing we're gonna do for the assembly is set up our facade. So first, we're gonna take off these Velcro strips here that are keeping the whole facade together. Next, you'll wanna make sure that the facade is facing downwards on its feet, which are right here. So we gotta flip the facade over. But first, I just wanted to show you guys how these feet are adjustable so that if you're working on an uneven surface, you can adjust these feet so that the facade will be even in your setup. So if you wanted to raise the feet, you're just going to twist each foot to the left, and that's gonna raise them up. And if you wanted to lower the feet, you're just gonna twist them to the right. So now that I got the feet all set up, I'm going to flip the facade upside down. So now all we have to do is unfold the facade by taking each end here and stretching it out just like this. Again, if you find the facade is uneven, you can use the feet at the bottom to adjust it. Once the facade is all set up, the next thing we can do is set up our large DJ table. To do that, we're gonna look for these screws here on the facade, and we're just going to loosen each one and take them off, just like this. Next, we're gonna take our DJ table and look for these hooks here. And if you look at the hooks, you'll see that there are these holes in the middle. So we're gonna line up these holes to the holes of the facade where we just took those screws out. So we're gonna make sure that the hooks catch the frame of the facade and line up to the holes of the facade. Once you do that, it should be completely even like you see here. So then we're gonna take the screws that we took out earlier and line them up to each of the holes here, and then just screw them on just like this. Now on the front of the facade, you'll notice these holes here that can be used for a TV mount. We actually sell a separate bundle that comes with the TV mount and a separate scrim that has the opening for the TV mount. So just keep in mind, if you wanted to use that TV mount setup, you can't use the scrims that come included with this bundle, so you'll have to get that TV mount bundle with the separate scrim. But we're just going with the standard setup today, so let's move on to the next part. So now that our DJ table is set up to the facade, the next thing we can do is set up the truss poles. So to start, we're gonna take the two poles that have the rubber feet on the bottom, and we're also going to need this hardware that comes with these black bolts and these black screw knobs. So with one pole at a time, I'm just going to line up these hooks here that have these square holes to the square holes here on the facade, just like this. So next we're gonna take two of our black bolts here, and we're gonna run the screw through the square holes here. And we recommend doing it from the outside of the facade so that the head is facing outwards. You'll also want to make sure that the square end of the head lines up to the square holes of the hooks. So once you have the bolts run through, you're going to take two of these screw knobs and screw them on to each end of the bolt, just like this. We're going to do the same exact thing with the second pole here and the remaining hardware. So now that we've got these side poles attached to the facade, the next thing we're going to want to do is attach the center poles. To do that, we're actually gonna want to join the two center poles together, just like this. Then to make sure that they stay together, we're gonna take one of our silver bolts here and one of our wing nuts. We're gonna take the bolt and run it through the center hole here, just like this. Then we're gonna take our wing nut and screw it onto the other side of the bolt. Now that we got the center pole all set up, we're going to attach it to the side poles here. To do that, we're gonna wanna loosen up these knobs here on each side of the center pole. Then we're gonna line up these openings to the top of each side pole like this, and just guide it down. And then we're gonna tighten up these knobs to secure the center pole onto the side poles. Now we're gonna leave the truss down here for now so it makes it easier to set up our lights, but eventually when it comes time to raise the truss, we're gonna use these side knobs here on the side pulls to lift up the truss, and then we'll be able to secure the height that we set it to by using the safety pins on the side pulls. We're gonna come back around for that in a bit, but for now we're gonna go on to the next step, which is adding one of our scrims. So once it comes time to attach your scrims, you actually have two different options because we provide one scrim in white and one scrim in black. Now we provided these two options depending on the type of setup you want to have. So if you wanted your facade to illuminate with the lights that you have, you can use the white scrim, or if you wanted to project light onto the facade, you can use the black scrim. For our setup today, we're going to attach the white scrim so we can illuminate our facade. But if you want to set up your black scrim, you're going to follow the same exact steps. So first thing we're going to want to do is open up our facade here. And when we place our scrim over the facade, we actually want to make sure that it's flipped the right way. So we're going to want to make sure that the top of our scrim completely covers the top of the facade. So we're going to take the corners of our scrim and line them up to the inner corners of our facade, just like that. Then you can wrap around the corners like this and join the Velcro together to keep it in place. After that, we're going to want to make sure to pull down on the slack of the corners and make sure that it's lined up to the inner corners of the facade. Once the top of the scrim is secure, you're going to want to do the same thing for the bottom of the scrim. Line up the bottom corners of the scrim to the corners of the facade on the bottom. You may need to lift up the booth so that the scrim fits around these bottom corners. And then wrap the corners around the facade like this and make sure to secure the Velcro of the scrim to keep it together. And now that our scrim is attached to the facade, the next thing we can do is attach our second table here in case we want to add that to our setup. To do that, you're just going to line up the hooks of the table to the top of the facade just like this. Push it down to make sure it's secure. And just like that, we now have two tables to use for our DJ setup. You can also use the holes here on each table to run your wire through for a clean setup, especially if you're using any DJ or sound equipment. And again, if you wanted to use the black scrim instead of the white scrim, you're just gonna follow the same exact steps. Now the next thing to do is light up our rock booth truss. We have a few different ways we can do this. One way is by taking a light like our rock wedge LED here, attaching a C-clamp like this, and then just picking a spot where we want to mount this light onto our truss, say right here, and then just screwing it on just like this. The other way to do this is by mounting the lights with the pre-drilled holes here along the truss. To do that, we're gonna need the bolts and wing nuts that come included with the rock booth truss, and mounting hardware for your lights like this one here that comes included with one of our moving headlights. So say we wanted to mount our light right here in the middle of the truss, we're gonna take our bolt and run it through the hole of the truss here. We're then gonna take our mounting hardware and run it through the other end of the bolt on the bottom here. Then we're gonna take our wing nut and screw it on to the other end of the bolt like this. And if it helps at all, you can take a screwdriver and place it onto the head of the bolt like this. Hold the wing nut in place and then just tighten up the bolt to lock the mounting hardware in place. So now that the mounting hardware is all set up, the next thing you're gonna wanna do is take your light, secure it onto the truss using the mounting hardware, and then you're all set. For my setup today, I'm just gonna take a few rock wedges and line them up to the truss using some C-clamps. But remember, if you wanted to use lights with mounting hardware, you can use these pre-drilled holes and follow the steps that I just showed you. The truss is able to hold up to 220 pounds of lights, so just keep that in mind when you're placing your lights onto the truss. Once you have all of your lights secured to the truss, you can raise up the truss by loosening these knobs here on the side pulls. Then you're just gonna take the center pole here and carefully lift up. Once you lift it up, you'll see these holes here along the side poles, and you can use this safety pin here and run it through these holes to secure the height. Then we're gonna place it down and then tighten the knob up to lock it all in place and to make sure it's secure. You also have the option of raising your truss first and then setting up your lights if that makes for an easier setup. Another way we can light up our booth is by wall washing the DJ facade if you're using the white scrim. So if you're using the white scrim like we're using here, you can use par lights and line it up to the inside of the facade. From there you can either place your light completely flush against the facade, or you can place your light a few inches away and point it in the direction of the facade. And lastly, if you're using the black scrim with your setup, you can take a light that's further away from your setup and point it directly at the facade, which is a great setup, especially if you have projector lights. So once you're all done with your booth, you can follow the steps in reverse to take it apart. Then once you have the truss pieces removed, you can put the pieces back into the smaller bag here, which is divided into 2 sections, so you can put 2 of these holes in per section, and there's also these Velcro straps inside to keep the rod still when you're moving them around. So I'm gonna take 2 pieces at a time and place them in just one of these sections. Then I'm gonna wrap these Velcro strips around the poles like this. I'm gonna do the same exact thing with the remaining holes like this. I can also place the hardware inside of the small bag, and once I have everything packed up, I'm gonna zip the bag up, and now I can pack up the rest of my items into the larger bag here. I'm gonna place the facade inside first, then I'll pack up the larger table, then I'll pack up the smaller table, and lastly the 2 scrims. Once that's all packed, I can close up the bag and zip it up. And now I'm all set to take the booth out to my next gig or event, or to store it away. Each of these bags has carry handles so we can carry both at the same time. And the larger bag has this Velcro padding here that we can use to combine these 2 handles together so that it makes carrying and traveling a bit easier. So hopefully this showed you guys how easy it is to set up your rock booth truss. But of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our customer support team through phone or email. As always, I'm Perry from Rockville, and we'll see you guys next time.